Okay, so I know that for many of you, creating a business can feel so overwhelming. I know that many of you are in that place, and I know that you know that. However, you might not be quite sure how to get out of that place. If so, this episode is specifically for you. And welcome to the new episode on From Grind to Grace, the show for the alternative entrepreneur, the entrepreneur who is ready to flip the script and choose freedom first. When freedom is not a destination, when freedom is the path, because when you create your business from the place of freedom, success just tags along for the ride. So let's make that the new standard in this industry, the default for you, for your children, and for humanity. Welcome. And as usual, I have an amazing guest to help me dive into this important topic about overwhelm because that was the exact thing we shared just before I started recording this episode. That's the exact touch point, and yet another person telling about the same thing as you and I have been through and go and potentially go still going through and trying to resolve. So very welcome on my podcast. Samantha, I really appreciate that you are here. I know this is gonna be an awesome conversation. I can't wait to dive into it with you together. And yeah, if you could say a few words about how you actually got. I know you do some things differently, which is why it's so exciting to talk to you. So if you could give a quick intro about yourself.
Hi, yes, I'm so excited to be here. Yes, I do things differently. I loved that little introduction because I was that person who was overwhelmed and was hustling, and I had my own business and it was thriving, and I was always challenging myself and gosh, just like pushing is what it felt like. And pushing a rock is the vivid like picture coming in my head right now. And it was at the time like fun is what it felt like almost like I was challenging myself and it felt like is what I should do.
It's like you
But
convince yourself that's
yes,
okay.
yes. Yeah, looking back, I'm like, but it wasn't. I was exhausted. I was overwhelmed. And like now, the fact that I don't do it that way now, I'm able to see it differently. And my breaking point was when I had my son. And it almost wasn't my breaking point. It was like my, like such clarity, like aha, like breathing moment of like, okay, I had my son during COVID. It was October of 2020. And I just had this feeling of, I can't keep going like this and I need to reprioritize. And that was when a ton of overwhelm hit, like the new mom overwhelm. And I remember I was sitting on my couch with my partner at the time, my husband at the time, and it was everything was hitting me, all of my responsibilities with my business, with being a mom, being a wife. And I just remember thinking, I don't know how to verbalize what's happening internally, but I need to get it out. And so I excused myself and I was like, I'm just going to go journal. And I remember locking myself in a room because I didn't know like what emotions were going to come out. But I locked myself in the room. I wrote vent sesh at the top of a piece of paper randomly. And then I wrote, I feel like I'm dropping all of the balls. And I wrote about like my all of the business activities that I felt like I was were like slipping through the cracks and all the things I wanted to do and be as a mom and wife and all of it. And it was so cool because truly it was the first time in my life where I stop thinking so positively and optimistic. And I was just being really honest with the hard that it is to be a business owner and a mom and all of that. And there weren't any solutions that came from that journal session, but just the validity that I felt.
Mhm.
And yeah, the clarity that I had of just the current moment was the very beginning of what ended up transpiring from it.
Yeah, I love that. And I applaud uh, for you, for actually giving yourself the permission to tell yourself that you were dropping all the balls, that you were struggling. Honestly, I think that that could be one of the key reasons why these women, these entrepreneurs are struggling. They don't even want to admit to themselves that they are struggling. And so, right, if you can
Yeah.
admit, how can you start to see things differently and to recover? And, we can start throwing rocks at the societal norms and, the industry. Do you think that's what is causing this issue? Like we are not meant to, complain per se, or say that we are weak, admit that we are weak or something like that?
Yeah, I think it definitely could. I think for me personally, I felt like the emotions behind it were too scary and that I didn't want to admit to anything besides positivity, really, and that it was easier to keep pushing and to keep trying new things, right? And like you said, if once you admit that there are challenges, then it's like we can slow down and think of new solutions. But if we don't do that, it's easier to stay in the grind, even if the grind isn't working, even if the grind is burning you out. It's easier to stay the course than to stop. And that's what I was so scared about, was what happens if I stop? Even
Mm.
though we know, like, everybody who does stop knows that it's like can be the most beautiful thing, but it's scary. And even journaling, I say, is like, and going to therapy, any sort of healing is the most brave thing that you can do because you're facing those scary emotions. You're facing those societal norms. You're facing all of those things that contribute to why you are the way that you are. You're facing the sabotage patterns that you've had up until now. And so it is a scary thing to face why it is where you are.
I love this as well. And for the listener who can see, only listening, I'm nodding my head like crazy because something is actually landing for me, and why journaling particularly can work because, as a way to stop, because you are journaling. It's not like you are doing nothing. You are actually doing something. So it could be a very good first step,
Hmm.
right? And also, to get into that place of honesty with yourself. Nobody's gonna read that. Nobody else is gonna see that. It's not like doing a video on YouTube or social,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. So it feels like it's an action item that it can even be on your to-do list for all of you people like the hustlers out there that like need to feel productive. Journaling can be an action item, but you're right in that journaling actually slows you down. And there's research behind the brain and hand connection and slowing down enough so that you can actually hear your voice and like
Mm.
have a conversation with yourself. And that's when answers come through. That's when you can slow down. And I don't mean slow down by doing nothing and just breathing and meditating, which is also great, but just slowing down enough to like physically write something instead of typing or texting, right? Just a little bit slower where you can just journal out a question that you've been hemming and hawing over or something that you've been doubting or whatever it might be. And just the duration of time between when you're writing, why is this happening? Or what should I do? Or whatever it is, a solution could pop up for you, or just clarity on why it
Mhm.
is happening or something. So you're actually, it becomes this like conversation with yourself.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't journal. I did start journaling quite recently to some degree, but and it's very like freestyle kind of thing.
Hmm.
I think the big reason for me personally why it works is that when you start writing, you get very quite specific. Like you have to, as opposed to just maybe trying to think about something somewhere in between, start thinking, not completing that thought, running through those things, kind of racing, thoughts racing in your head. Now, when you write, you actually become specific and you are start articulating various things, what you want, what your problems are, how you feel, right?
Yes, I love that you mentioned that because that is where the magic is. It's when you make it personal. It's not like the Pinterest prompts that you might find because those might be great, but I've actually never used prompts because they're not personal to what I'm going through. However, that's also the struggle. I think people might understand that concept of, yes, make it personal, and they want to tap into what it is they're going through. But like I said earlier, it's scary to do that. You don't know what's going to come up. And then also, they don't know how to prompt themselves through that. And they're nervous they're going to get stuck in it, or they do get stuck in it. They start journaling and they're just like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. And then they close their journal and they're done with it. And so I actually did create something because I kept getting asked when I was journaling through my divorce. So I ended up getting so much clarity around like what I wanted and what I deserved, especially now having a son. I wanted to show him what, women deserve to be treated like and whatnot. And so I ended up getting a divorce, and people started asking me, how are you doing this? Like, and doing it so gracefully because I was sharing my journaling like videos online. And I realized I did have a process to get from like this insane, like overwhelm, but also grief and
Hmm.
nostalgia and all of these like heavy feelings through the messy middle to the end, which was like action of like, okay, well, what can I do? And so I created a guide that walks you through just 5 prompts. And I realized I was literally went through all of my journals of like, what am I actually doing to get you through that so that you get to the other side?
Yeah, so I think what we are saying here is that if you are feeling overwhelmed, journaling is a very good first step. It kind of starts directing you into some certain direction, right? So that is really, really cool. And the other thing that you mentioned in our conversation was trust, trusting yourself. Talk to me about it and what the hell is going on, first of all, in this industry that people are not trusting themselves, and also the importance of it. Why, if like, and the topic, the overarching topic is creating your business from the place of freedom, how that trust plays into this idea and how I don't think you can actually feel free at
Mm,
all, ever, if you don't embrace and find that self-trust, right?
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that people don't trust themselves to answer your first question because they might be in the grind like we've been talking about. And if you're when you're in the grind, your blinders are on, right? And so you just don't stop to think about creative solutions or pausing to ask yourself truly, what is it that I actually want? Like if I could do anything in the world, what would I actually want, or how would I want this to look? One of my clients was a CEO of a company in the UK, and something that she told me was that she was battling her vision for what the board of the company would want, which to me told me that she doesn't trust herself because of the people that she wanted to please. And it was a little bit of the sabotage too of people pleasing. And of course, with that situation, there's ways to go about, expressing it, but trusting you, knowing your vision, first of all, like hearing your voice, and then trusting that it's what you want and the direction that you want to go in. And so, why we're not hearing it, I think, again, it's those blinders on. We're not opening ourselves up. We're not thinking differently. But if you're listening to this podcast, you are, right? You're open to that. But you're right too in that I don't think we can ever experience true freedom if we don't allow ourselves to ask the hard questions and trust with whatever comes up. When I first started my journaling business, there was serious self-doubt because I'm like, who runs a journaling business? What is a journal
Mm.
coach? Like literally, what is that? I think I made that up in the
How do
beginning.
you sell it? Journaling, you know?
Yeah. And then it was just like it's I don't know, it just seems so silly, but I just trusted myself because that was what I became so passionate about. It was what led me to so much clarity and hope. It's what people were asking me about and I was like, I'm just gonna do this. And same thing with trusting myself with my relationship and going through with the divorce. It was the hardest decision of my life and I felt like I like physically felt my heart like hurting, but at the same time I had so much hope for the future. And so just allowing yourself to trust even when it's hard, even when it's a really hard decision,
So would
allows
you
that
say
freedom.
journaling would get you to that place, would help you get to that place, trusting yourself? I guess the key is hearing your own thoughts in the first place, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love this. So the way that I do that is, and so the very first step before anything, I would suggest doing an emotional brain dump. And to me, that's just brain dumping anything that's on your mind. So this is really great for non-journalers that are listening and those who are worried that they're going to get like stuck in the messy middle and whatnot. So a brain dump is like write down your to-do list if you want, or any emotional stuff that's going on. Write down the person's name that's annoying you, any situation in your business, anything at all. And then you want to read through it, and you're going to see some trends that you mentioned the word overwhelm, 5 times, or
Mm.
you mentioned miscommunication with so and so a bunch of times. You're going to start to be like, oh, that's important to me, or like that's weighing heavy on me. So that's where you make journaling personal. It's not, like I said, those other prompts. This is how you become aware of what it is that you can focus on first. But then where the inner voice comes in and like how you learn what it is that you can trust, my 5 steps, I'll just go through it quickly. The first one is awareness, right? So let's say, let's use a business example. Maybe you have a decision that you've been hemming and hawing over, and you just don't know what to do, and you've been very overwhelmed by it, and you don't want to hustle anymore, and it's just weighing on you. So, the first step is awareness. You just want to write down kind of another brain dump, if you will, write down everything that you can about this situation. Become aware of any facts, any other emotions. And then the second step is what does it mean? Or what are you making it mean? What are the judgments that you have about yourself? Like maybe you're making it mean that this business isn't for you, or you're making it mean that others think you're failing, or you have this expectation of yourself, or you think others have an expectation of you. This is where I think a lot of people skip this step because people say like, "Oh, it doesn't matter what other people think." But it does because it's weighing on us in the back of our mind if we're not acknowledging it, right? And so that's step 2. The next prompt is curiosities, where I simply ask, is that true? To the prior question. So, is it
Right.
true that you're not cut out for this business? Is it true that other people think you're failing? Is it true that, this expectation is actually expected of you? And if it is, does it need to be? You're a grown adult now. You can rewrite the rules. And so it's just questioning. It's like playing devil's advocate and rewriting what you want to be true, which leads into my fourth prompt of clarity. This is where you ask yourself, okay, based on everything I now know, what is it that I want? So many people start off with, like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I'm hustling. What do I want instead? But you've got to work through those underlying beliefs, expectations, judgments, and challenging that and questioning it before getting to the clarity. So this is where you start to hear that inner voice and what it's telling you and what you deserve and what you want. Then my final step is action. And it's micro steps. So it's not like, oh, I want to hire a team and delegate out, because that's huge. That even like if you want one person, that would be like you have I would challenge you to break it down. Maybe one step would be writing out all of the tasks that you would love help with someday, and then choosing one of those tasks and writing up a job description, and then googling all of the different help sites that you might be able to post on, and then the next day choosing one of the help sites and posting on it, right? And so like micro steps, all of the teeny tiny things that go into it, so that you start off feeling like overwhelmed or whatever it is. And then by the end, it's not just feeling better, it's knowing what you want, trusting that it's for you, and actually knowing the steps to get there.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It's really super cool. Sounds really cool. And so do you do all the steps every time when you journal, or how do you do it?
That's a good question. I don't do it every time. I
Oh.
really do that when I feel stuck, or when I am looking for answers on something. Also, a long time ago, I created what I call the journal prompt archive, and it's journal prompts based on emotional goals. And one section is journaling for the good days, because there are days where I journal and it's like, there's no problem at all. Like I'm actually happy today, or business is going
Do
well,
you
or I'm
still
feeling,
journal on the good
yeah,
days? Do you do that?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
very
I don't
cool.
journal every day by any means. One of my tips for journaling is consistency does not mean daily. Consistency is a pattern that you can repeat. So even if it's once a week and you told yourself on Tuesdays you're going to journal with your morning cup of coffee, but what if that Tuesday all is good in the world? You still want to show up for yourself. So on that day, I wouldn't necessarily use this blueprint. But on a day where, shit's going down and you really want to tap into it, then I would. And I have found that actually I'm going through it right now, where I've been feeling so good for a while that I stopped journaling consistently, or I just pop into my journal here and there and just write like my to-do list or something. And I
Mhm.
feelings have been boiling up, and I'm just like, all right, I need to like do this brain dump, get it all out. So last night I actually did do that, the blueprint.
Yeah, very cool. And do you consider so, and I think what we are saying as well for the audience, is that journaling is not somewhere in between. It's actually part of what you do. It's
Yes,
deliberate, sort of like to do item, right?
yes. Mm-hmm.
So do not feel guilty or do not feel like you're not doing anything productive. And what I found actually, and probably you too, that productivity has nothing to do, or not all of it, with actually sitting at your laptop or with your phone and posting content. I think what I found for myself as well, that productivity, I think I had a line at some point that rest is sometimes the most productive thing you can do, you know?
Yes. I fully believe that. I've been resting more and earning more and and allowing myself to be more creative. I don't know. Are you into human design at all?
I know a few things. right?
Okay.
I know what I am and I know
Okay.
like
Yeah, I just
high
know a little
level.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a projector. And
Right.
then I have a two in my profile. So the two is the hermit. So like you want to stay home and you need a lot of rest. And the projector is like the bird's eye view overseer, not the doer, not the like the yeah, the doer. And so once I learned that about myself, I created more rest in my day and I have rest blocks throughout my day.
Mhm.
A common business strategy is like work for 50 minutes and then take a 10-minute break, and then 50 minutes and then 10-minute break. But that never worked for me. That was too choppy and 10 minutes was too short too. I was like, I'm gonna work over and then I only have 5 minutes and then I might as well just keep working because 5 minutes is
And
nothing.
then maybe
I
you
would
get
just,
an idea, maybe you get a good idea and you
yeah,
want to finish it. And then other times you
exactly.
don't get any ideas.
Right. Yeah. So for me, what I tried was I do an hour and a half to 2 hour work block. And then I take like a 30-minute to an hour break. And I just have rest period on my calendar and resting. I actually did a podcast episode on this. There's 7 types of rest. I used to just nap because I thought I want to nap. But there's 7 different types. There is physical rest, which is napping, but there's also emotional rest. So that's things like journal, like get things out of your
Mhm.
head and onto paper, get it out of there, right? There's also creativity rest. There's spiritual rest. There's not there's social rest. And so that's like getting out in public, like being around people. So, sometimes I'll even go next door to my parents' house and just pick some apples, and resting more in this way allows, downloads to come in and creativity. And I feel so much more free talking about doing business a different way. Like I'm working less, but more creative. And it feels like I actually own my day instead of being glued to a computer the whole day, hoping that I'm like
I,
waiting for an email.
yeah, that is so cool. And I actually, I can resonate with that so much. I relate. I used to nap, when I discovered rest, finally, years and years later, I discovered rest. My rest used to be a nap, say I have lunch and I have a quick nap, whether it's 5 minutes, sometimes maybe it's 15 minutes, whatever, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But now it's normal. But then after doing it for a while, like almost like every day, I started feeling like I'm in a box. Like it's always the same. All days are always the same. And that started weighing on me as well.
Mm.
It's always like I guess it felt like there is no expansion. I'm just like I'm in this constant sameness, of doing things.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 hours. I do 2 hours. I call it monk mode. The
Yeah,
2 hour.
I love that.
You know, and yeah. So I absolutely love this idea of 7 types of rest, which is so true. Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah. And even that expansion, I love that word. That's something that you could journal through too, because right away, the awareness is my day is the same every single day. And the way one of my private clients put it was that there were no breadcrumbs. She wanted breadcrumbs knowing that her life was changing for the better or improving in some way. And it just was like Groundhog's Day. Every day was the same. And then the meaning is like, what meaning were you attaching to that? Like maybe your life wasn't improving, or maybe income wasn't going to be growing, or whatever thoughts you had about that. Like, why did it feel so bad? That's the meaning
Mhm.
portion. And then, is that true? And the is that true isn't meant to be a hard yes or a hard no. It's like truly just gaining, like asking that question. Then that clarity of like, the clarity is expansion. I want more. And what does that
Mhm.
look like? I want more variety. I want more space in my day. I want more freedom. And then the action steps of like, okay, this is how I'm going to do that.
Yeah, this is so true. I think you hit the nail on its head by saying, so I guess alluding to, well, for me, what I was thinking when you were explaining this was that as I increasingly felt in a box and the sense of expansion kind of stopped or reduced. so did my energy. So then everything else was getting affected
Oh, yeah.
as well, right? Like how I see how I'm succeeding or not, how I'm creative or not, the quality of my content. That was, yeah, that is so true. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah, it's super cool. I love
Something
this.
Something that I love thinking about now is the ripple effect. So, what is the ripple effect of what you do or a decision that you make or what you invest in? And it's things like that. It's like, okay, if you make more room for yourself, and it might seem silly of like, every day I'm going to go outside for 10 minutes. But it's things like that. I'm going to feel more energized. I'm going to get more sunshine on my face. I'm going to be happier. And then if you play it further out, it's then when my kids get home from school, I'm going to be more patient because I've poured into myself.
Mm.
I'm going to, be happier when I'm making dinner. I'm going to be more present because I'm doing these things. But you don't even realize that you've been so dampened by, whatever it is that you've been doing unless you bring awareness to it, which is why that's always the first step.
Yeah, and also every time I change something and I do something differently, something amazing happens.
Mm.
Like every single time I see something new, I meet something new, there's a new opportunity, there's this new thing, there's this new beauty that inspires me to create something, you know,
Yeah.
something that wows me, like, oh my God, I just went out and I came back, with a bag of mushrooms, that are apparently are growing just around the corner. From this place,
Yeah.
abundance. And that gave me this crazy sense of abundance just
Yes.
because I kicked myself in the butt to go for a walk.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned self-sabotage, and I imagine these things are related.
Hmm.
But what is the specific thing about self-sabotage, how it works? And for people who are potentially sabotaging themselves,
Hmm.
but not quite grasping that or
Mm.
noticing that, what could you tell to them about it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably don't recognize that they are. And the reason that is because there are 10 main ways that we self-sabotage, and they were formed when we were kids. Between the ages of 5 to 7, they are solidified. And the ways that we choose subconsciously as children keep us safe. So, for example, one of the ways, which is my top one, is people pleasing. Now, this one I think people are pretty aware of, but I'll share some other ones too. But people pleasing is something that we develop as kids because when we do it, especially people pleasing, because we think that doing that thing means that we're going to get love in return. And as children, that's a core, I mean, as human beings, love and food and community. Those are core needs that we have. And so we do those things because we're going to get food on the table as a kid, right? And we need that to survive. Or we're going to get love and we need that to survive. But even things like the victim, that's one of the saboteurs, is like the pity card of poor me. And we do that as kids because when we fall into that, other people will feel bad for us, and that feels like love as a child. And
Mm.
so this is all subconscious. We
And
don't do this on
what do you
purpose.
say is the difference between being compassionate, feeling compassion for yourself,
Mhm.
and being a victim?
Well, compassion is the way to reverse it. So
Ooh.
the number one saboteur, if you will, or sabotage pattern for everybody, there's actually a quiz where you can rank yourself. And I can give you that link if you want for the show notes. But the number
Mhm.
one for everybody, and it won't even pop up on the quiz because it's number one for everybody, is the judge. And this is how you judge yourself and how other people judge you, or how you think other people judge you, or how you judge others. All about judgment. Which is why also, I mean, I created the blueprint before learning all of this, but judgment is the second one, essentially, with that meaning. And these are judgments like, my life is so bad, or whatever, even like that shirt doesn't look good on that person, think whatever it might be. And the way to disrupt the judge is self-compassion, is showing yourself that you are safe, you are loved. It is safe to have that thought that you are not a bad person and things like that. And there's a unique way to disrupt each saboteur, but the way that these show up, fast forward to now in, our adults' lives, especially in our businesses, my second one is the avoider. So this is basically procrastination, but also
Mm.
avoiding things that are important to us and we know we want to do it, but it just seems like a big
Mm.
task, right? So we put it off. Or it seems like a small task and we're like, we'll do it later. Yeah, it's like 3 months and we still haven't done it. And so it's things like that that we just think that we're lazy, or we put another label on it without realizing that it's actually sabotage and it's subconscious. So that's a thing where we have to show ourselves compassion or else we can't move through it.
Mm. Yeah, wow. Okay. That actually clarifies some. I think, and the reason I asked this question is that a lot of people, potentially mostly women, are scared of being compassionate towards themselves.
Mm.
They think, and I think that's what our society teaches us, you'll be weak
Mm.
if you feel sorry for yourself. However, from my own experience, actually finally feeling sorry for myself was a huge breakthrough. I
Yeah,
realized I never allowed myself to feel that way towards me,
yeah.
and that was so
Well,
unfair.
one of the saboteurs is hyper rational. And so that means you're overthink not there's another one that's overthinking, but hyper rational is you're too much in your brain, you're too logical, and you're not enough in your emotions when when it's appropriate. So there's strengths for all of these. So being logical, that's a really good thing. But there are times in our life, like, when you need to feel sorry for yourself, where compassion and like feeling sorry for yourself can be so healing. And even with other people, especially the hyper rational, can make other people feel unheard and unworthy and all of that because we often we're the fixers. The hyper rational jumps to solutions instead of just acknowledging what it is that the other person is feeling or what it is that you are feeling.
So how do you recognize this one? Because, and I don't know if this is the same as perfectionism, but what I realized at some point that, everybody is like judging perfectionists.
Mm,
However, perfectionists, what I found, they don't know they are perfectionists. They don't necessarily recognize that in themselves. In their mind, they are doing the way they need to do things,
mm-hmm,
and when you talk to them about like, just do the 80%, go with the 80%, in their head, the 80% is different from the 80% that someone else is doing or thinking. Right.
mm-hmm.
So how do you recognize those things?
I would say, especially for that example with the perfectionist, but really any of the saboteurs, you'll recognize it, I believe, when you feel tension in your life. So for me, I felt a ton of tension with procrastination. I have so many journal entries where I'm just so frustrated. That was the number one word. It's like I'm so frustrated that I'm not doing this thing, or like I'm avoiding this thing, or I'm procrastinating. I feel lazy, all of that. But with the perfectionist, there will be definite tension between the perfectionist and who it is they're trying to work with, whether it be the perfectionist and their kids, right? That alone, the dynamic in the home, that's going to feel like there's tension or just arguments or just like some, like there's always like she might feel like her kids are always butting heads with each other or with her. Or in the office, she might always feel like the team and her are misaligned. Maybe misalignment is a better word. There's going to be like something's off. And that's your cue. That would be my cue for you to journal on it, to think, and just to ask yourself, what is off? And just to get really curious, not from a judgmental place, but just to be curious around all the different aspects of your life so that you can start to bring awareness to these things. Maybe do the quiz to see like what your top ones are, and that might give you some advice as well. But identifying that, and then with the perfectionist too, yes, you could do, 80% is, good enough, and 20% be the perfectionist, where that is a good trait to have. But for the perfectionist, it's key to get other people on board. Earlier, I was saying how in the beginning of my business, well, not beginning of my business, but the beginning of this episode, how I was just like pushing, right? And like pushing my business, pushing new ideas, all of that. And with a perfectionist, they push is like their word. They're like pushing to like control, pushing their way, and they think it's because it's going to make things more efficient and quicker, right? And it's coming from a good place in their heart, but everybody else feels resistance, like, but I don't want to do it that way, or but we could do it this way instead, or that person is so controlling. And
Mm.
so it's like taking even longer, and it's not a good work environment. And so for the perfectionist, from their standpoint, their goal should be, if they're trying to work on this, is how do I get more of a pull? How do I inspire these people to come with me instead of me pushing them to come with me? How do I get them to want to walk or to
Mm.
run with me? And the way to do that is to ask for their advice on how would they want to do something. Even if you end up doing it your way, just allowing them to chime in. And that's just one example of what the perfectionist could do.
That is so good. It really is. I love that insight. I don't know if I have the, perfection, or maybe we all have to some degree. I don't know. In certain things,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
certain aspects of life, I don't know.
Yeah, what
Potential.
in the ranking, we have them all. It's just different ones show up in a different capacity. So,
Okay, so what are the other ones, some of the other ones that you have on the list?
so I'll share. So, people pleaser, avoider, hyperachiever. I feel like a lot of people listening to
That
this
one, that one is
podcast.
on the list.
There's hyperachiever, hypervigilance, hyper rational, stickler, controller. So the stickler is the perfectionist.
Mhm.
The hypervigilance is the overthinker. There's the I said hyper rational, the judge who's like the top tier one, and then the judge triggers all of these accomplice ones. There's restless. I feel like a lot of people listening are probably also restless. This is the person who jumps from thing to thing, from activity to activity, or opportunity to opportunity, or they have sticky notes all over their desk of like all the things that they have to do, and or all of the things that they should be doing, or all of the ideas that they have. And it's because they, kind of have FOMO. They don't want to miss out. They think it's a great thing, but they don't know how to rest. Kind of like we were talking about earlier. They don't know when to like press pause, and they are almost trying to not be present subconsciously. Of course, they're not present in the current moment, and
Mm.
they are avoiding the current moment, thinking that it's bad. Like they're gonna lose their income right now, or someone's
Mhm.
gonna be mad at them right now, or something like someone's yelling at them right now. And so they're just like, if I do this, things will be better. If I do this, things will be better. If I do this, something will be better than right now, even if right now is good. Even if right now is like the best it's ever been, something could always be better. So restless is always jumping. I've just pictured jumping from thing to thing.
Yeah, and that's where we end up being overwhelmed,
Oh, for sure.
actually. You know, and I was thinking, listening to you, so, and you mentioned human design as well. So I am a manifesting generator,
Hmm.
which means I'm multi-passionate, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Which obviously, on one hand, helped me give myself certain amount of grace, but also, and I probably need to dig a little deeper into this, but also, so how am if I am meant to jump from thing to thing, so first of all, how is that different from this saboteur, the
Hmm.
last one you talked about?
Yeah.
And but then also, how am I then supposed to complete something, get something done,
Yeah.
if I'm meant to
Yeah.
do many things?
Yes, this is a very valid question and something I would also journal on. But the thing that I feel like I would ask you is, are you seeing anything through? And how is it feeling for you? Because as a manifesting generator, you're right, you do get tons of ideas. And the thing for manifesting generators is you should pursue it until it doesn't fire you up anymore, until it becomes anything except a hell yes. And so at that point, that's when you can check in on yourself and say, is this still important to me? Does this still light me up? And if so, hand it off to a generator or hand it off to a projector. Ask the projector, who should I give this to? Right? Like they're the ones overseeing everything and they can do it.
I
So
think
that
that's
that
key.
opens,
It's not quitting, it's handing it off.
yes.
I think this is key.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it's not quitting. It's checking in to be like, where am I at? And that will allow you to then open up to another project if you have the
Right.
capacity, or to drop that project if it's just, yeah, no, this isn't working. So restless as a manifesting generator is not, or I would say you're in sabotage mode when you're jumping from thing to thing and not completing any of them. You're not seeing any of them through.
And also, it just dawned on me that you might not even be liking some of them.
Yeah.
So for
And
the manifesting generator, it's like you jump from thing to thing because you feel passionate about those things. For this one is you don't necessarily like what you're doing, but you're still doing jumping from one to the
yeah,
other. Yeah.
there's a different authority for each human design type, but for manifesting generator, an authority is your decision making. So how you should make decisions. And for manifesting generators, they say that it's like a full body hell yes or hell no. So to
Hmm.
wait for that feeling. And if it's not a hell yes, then wait for the next opportunity because for manifesting generators, opportunities come your way. Like earlier you even said like you'll do one thing and abundance is out there and you'll experience something new. So like things are coming your way and wait for that feeling of hell yes, I'm into this. And if it's anything but that, then maybe don't jump on that opportunity.
Yeah, very cool. And so how do you, so just, drive this home a little bit in terms of entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
So, how do all these things, or some of them, affect the way people run their business, or the way people put sticks in the wheels in their business?
Hmm.
So, what do they need to maybe try and unpack, and how are they supposed to find which type of sabotaging they are doing? Or which one is the dominating one? And because the whole goal for this, for these conversations is finding how to step into that freedom and trusting that you can actually create amazing things and amazing business from the place of freedom. And obviously, sabotaging yourself is not helping to be in that place.
Yeah. Yeah, with the sabotage, it's work. I mean, I created a whole program around that. But what I would share with your listeners is first take the quiz because if that's of interest to you, it's so interesting. And that alone will give you a lot of information and it's
Okay.
free. So I'll definitely give that to you. I will say you'll feel personally attacked. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, how do they know this about me? Just because it's like
Wow.
it hits home. I'll say that. Um, so take the quiz because that'll be very eye-opening. And then I would journal. And the journal prompt I would give you
Journaling
is
again. Here we go.
yes.
Very cool.
So, what you could start with is just how did those answers sit with me? Where do I see that it's obvious in my life? Or maybe it's not so obvious. It's kind of funny. Hyperachiever, when I first took the test, it was my second one. And I was a little surprised because as I've said, like I'm resting now more than ever. I used to be like goal after goal after goal, and I'm not anymore. And I was just I don't feel like I'm a hyperachiever anymore. So I took the test again. And I was like, oh, I guess maybe that in and of itself means like retaking a test means I'm a hyperachiever.
Oh, lousy.
But
How dare you? Because in our society, achieving is
yeah,
glorified like
yeah.
crazy. No.
And one thing when you take the test too, it will tell you your strengths. So it'll tell you what you're good at. Like
Oh,
it is good to be an
cool.
achiever and to be a go-getter and whatnot. Uh,
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna use
yes.
it for myself as well.
So journal on just like what's coming up for you around this. But then I would journal because I don't know, I'm never surface level journaling. I want to get to the juicy stuff. I want to get you some answers, right? And some direction. And so that's where I would ask yourself, where do you feel misalignment in your life? Or where do you feel tension in your life, irrelevant of what your quiz said? Do you feel tension at home? And is it with between you and your kids, you and your partner, um, you and your responsibilities? Is it with you and your business? So, like, where specifically do you feel tension or misalignment? And then dig into that some more too. And I can give you the link to the blueprint too if you want. That from there, that's your awareness. Then you can ask yourself the meaning, curiosity, clarity, and action.
Super, super, super cool. Yeah, lots of insights. Thank you so much.
Good.
So, you did mention a couple of things around what you do, who you help, and what you do. But if you want to add something or to elaborate on it, so who do you help and how they can work with you?
Yeah, so I help women right now, mostly the overwhelmed, stressed out woman who wants more for her life. I love the word expansion that you used earlier. My woman like wants an expansive life, but she's just stuck in her emotions and doesn't know how to get there. So
Mhm.
that's the type of woman that I help. And the way that I help is the main modality is journaling. Or we talk through it. I have a journaling community. I also do private coaching, and then I have a self-sabotage detox group, but I only run that twice a year. And then if you want to chat some more, I have a podcast, which Adita is going to be on my podcast, so we can link that episode. Or you can find me on Instagram as well at samantha.s.says. Oh, and my podcast is called Journal Entries.
I love it. Thank you so much for all the wisdom. And surprise, I asked three blitz questions. All my
Oh.
guests get three questions that they don't know about. They're not scary. They're very simple questions.
Oh
Um,
boy.
so, so the first one is, and I love the answers that I get and all the insights of, from all the different people and different angles. When you hear from grind to grace, what goes through your mind?
Ooh. I mean, I when I first heard it, I felt like I was brought back to my story of when I used to hustle. I was for grind. I was thinking hustle, hustle, hustle to like almost relaxation to peace
Mm.
and to peace is a lot of the outcome that I feel like I deliver to. So I think it was from like hustle to peace and doing it like in a flow.
That's on point. Totally. Like, totally. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So happy to see, how people resonate with this. And also a little sad as well, because I haven't met a single person who have who hasn't experienced this. It's crazy.
Mm,
It's just
yeah.
crazy. What is going on?
I
You
mean,
know?
I think our who we are copying is men, kind of like you were saying. Like we just,
Mm.
I did a podcast episode on this, but just a lot of research on even time management. All those books, except recent ones, were written by men who didn't have kids, or who
Yes,
didn't do all the responsibilities that moms do.
personal development, all that industry,
Yeah.
right? Women are
Yeah.
only infiltrating, now. You
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, very true. And the second question is, what change would you like to see in the world? And I'm kind of adding a twist because of some shuffling things around and creating certain things. So, what change would you like to see in the world? And well, I need to come up with this angle now. So, and change for your children as well. So I will think of how to phrase this. It's very fresh from this morning, but I would like to include that idea of not just like world, as a vague term, but also children, our children,
Mm.
your specifically children, if you can think of them, you know.
Yeah. Well, when I've thought about this before, I feel like I can change the world by helping moms and by helping them one at a time through the ripple effect that I referenced earlier, and by helping moms feel more, going from overwhelm to feeling more peace, that directly impacts their kids they're more patient with them even if their kid's having a meltdown. They're more present, like phones down, like actually present with their family. And then the ripple effect of that, I feel like, is their kids have a more stable connection with their family, which ripples into their group of friends, which ripples into how confident they are as people, which then ripples into how they show up at their school and like the leadership positions that they take. And it's just like this huge wave by the end of it.
Amazing. So the last question is actually, what impact would you personally like to make? And you partially answered that. Is there anything you would like to add?
Oh man. Um, a personal impact. Hmm. I feel like that's longer term. Well, not longer term because it's what I do now, but the extra big wave is the longer term.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like with the self-sabotage, that's more immediate. I would love to see more women realize how it's impacting them and then squashing it because disrupting those saboteurs, while it's taken our entire lives, like ingrained in us, we can learn to disrupt them, and it's so freeing on the other side. So the impact I would love to have is more women reclaiming who they are, not kind of going
Mm,
by this other people's standards and societal norms and whatnot, and defining their own version of success.
love that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Really loved having you here with me. Another amazing guest with even more wisdom to deliver to my listener who probably needs to hear this stuff. And to the listener, if you received value, if you received insights, follow, share this with whoever you think might need this. Let's make this a mission. Let's get on a mission, to change this industry for good. We need it. Everyone needs it. So thank you again, Samantha. Lovely to
Thank you for
chat with
having
you
me.
and everyone else. I'll talk to you in a week.